Hello everyone. Today we are going to read our third chapter, Forms of Government. The government is a political system by which a country or a state is administered. Its functions are to build the infrastructure of the country, look after the welfare of the people, maintain law and order in the country. When we talk about the forms of government, we have to understand its powers and functions. The functions of the government are carried out by its three organs: the legislature, which is the law-making organ, the executive, which implements these laws, and the judiciary, which sees to it that these laws are carried out. A form of government is a system by which a state or country is governed. The constitution forms the basis on which a country or state will be governed. Governments are classified on the basis of objectives, policies, the way power is exercised, and the nature of the constitution. Democracy and authoritarianism. Democratic governments and non-democratic or authoritarian governments are classified on the basis of answerability to people. The word democracy is derived from two Greek terms, demos and kratos. These two words together mean authority of the people. Development of the human personality is possible only when the individual enjoys freedom of action and speech. A democratic form of government helps to create such conditions. The most direct form of popular participation is adult franchise. Universal adult franchise means that all adult citizens have the right to vote. Through this, representatives are elected and a government is formed. The organization and functioning of the government is controlled by the people. While government authority is recognized, individual rights and liberty are also important. The word authoritarian means absolute obedience of authority. A small group of people, a particular social class, or a strong political party controls all the decision making in the government. Citizens are not allowed to raise any questions about political institutions and their methods of functioning. Authority, obedience, and order plays an important part. Countries like Libya, Sudan, and Myanmar were under military rule. However, with people's movements and popular uprising, transition towards democracy is taking place in these countries. Parliamentary and presidential. The parliamentary and presidential forms of government are based on the extent to which the executive and the legislature are dependent or independent of each other. Under the presidential system, the legislature and executive are separate. There is separation of powers. In the parliamentary form, the executive is a part of the legislature and there is fusion of powers. Also, in the parliamentary system, the head of the state is separate from the head of the government. The head of the government is elected on the basis of the number of members the political parties have in the legislature. If a party has a clear majority in the legislature, the leader of that party becomes the prime minister. Sometimes no party has a clear majority. In such cases, a number of parties may form a coalition to form the government. The executive in the parliamentary form is based on the support of the party in the legislature. The political party or a coalition of parties that has the majority in the legislature controls the executive. The Prime Minister and the Cabinet in Great Britain are good examples of this form of government. In the presidential form, the executive and the legislature are separate. The real power is in the hands of an elected president who is not a member of the parliament. She or he is also not responsible to the parliament. Unitary and federal. When there is only one government for the whole country, it is known as a unitary form of the government. This form of government makes and also executes the laws. Great Britain, China, and Chile are examples of such a government. In a federal form of government, the distribution of power is between the central and the state governments. Most of the laws that the central government makes apply all over the country. Laws passed by the state government apply only in the state. Examples of this form of government are India, USA, Switzerland, Nigeria, Brazil. Constitutions. The Constitution is a set of laws which define how a state or country is governed. This rule states the distribution of power and authority within the country. The Constitution also states the limit to this power and authority. All the institutions of the government work within the provisions of the Constitution. There are different types of constitutions: written and unwritten, rigid and flexible. Written and unwritten constitutions. In a written constitution, the fundamental principles of the government are formally written. The Constitution of India was prepared between 9 December 1946 and 26 November 1949 by the members of the Constituent Assembly. The aims of the people and the vision of the leaders are contained and protected in the Constitution. This helps to avoid conflict of any kind. The British Constitution is an unwritten constitution and contains no single document. It consists of constitutional conventions and practices that have created precedents for the working of institutions, together with documents such as statutes and acts of parliament. Rigid and flexible constitutions. The rigidity and flexibility of a constitution is reflected in the process of amendment. Written constitutions are rigid. A rigid constitution cannot be changed or amended easily. To make amendments in the Constitution, specific procedures have to be followed. The central as well as the state majority is required to make changes or amendments in the Constitution. The American and the Indian Constitution are examples of a rigid constitution. A constitution that can be changed or amended easily without breaking its framework is called a flexible constitution. It can be amended by normal law-making procedures in the parliament. The British Constitution is an example of a flexible constitution. Franchise. The term franchise, when applied to elections, means the right of a citizen to vote. Franchise was once limited to citizens who could satisfy certain conditions such as educational, possession of wealth, and income. A vote enables citizens to choose the people who will represent them in the state assemblies. The vote gives citizens the right to choose the people who will govern the country. If the citizens are not satisfied with these people, they can replace them at the next election. In most democracies today, the right to vote is universal. It is granted as a fundamental right irrespective of race, ethnicity, class, or gender. This is also known as universal suffrage. The first step towards universal suffrage was taken in the early 19th century. It focused on removing property requirements for voting purposes. In the late 19th and early 20th century, the focus of universal suffrage was on giving voting rights to women. In fact, for a long time in many developed countries, women were not given the right to vote. Many societies in the past have denied people the right to vote on the basis of race or ethnicity. For example, non-whites could not vote in the apartheid era in South Africa. The system came to an end when the first free multi-party elections in 1994. Most universal suffrage systems still exclude some voters. For example, many countries deny the right to vote to convicted criminals or the mentally ill. Also, almost all countries deny the right to vote to non-citizen residents and citizens below the age of 18. So this was our chapter Forms of Government. If you have any doubt or query, you can ask me in the comment box below. Also, if you want links to other chapters, you can find them in the description box below. Thank you everyone.